Welcome to Sex on the Floor podcast. This podcast was created to help educate the public about problems with sex and intimacy and how this is tied to both physical and mental aspects. Hosted by myself, Dr. Molly Hart, a passionate pelvic floor physical therapist and owner of Pelvic Balance Physical Therapy, and by Dr. Katie Schubert, a phenomenal sex therapist and owner of Cypress Wellness Center. We are here to have a good time. We're here to keep it real with you all and to educate along the way. I'm so excited for you to join us. We strive to help many relationships prosper in fun, safe, and healthy intimacy. While listening to the show, please remember that this information is not meant to diagnose or treat any medical conditions. Please speak with your medical provider for all things related to your healthcare. Hello, all. Welcome back to Sex on the Floor podcast. We have not done an episode in a little while, but here we are. We're back, and we're going to try to be more consistent in 2026. But we have an exciting episode, I feel like, today. So it's Dr. Molly Hart and Dr. Katie Schubert here with you today, and I'll let Katie kind of take over the topic. We just chatted for a second, and I think we've got a fun topic for today.
We do. And we were talking about some of the things that we typically see in our offices. And one of the commonalities is, well, are women who come in and bring with them often an immense sense of shame and guilt and embarrassment around their own sexuality, which makes it really difficult to treat them initially because you have to break through those walls. Um, but what I was telling Molly just before we started recording is that you're not just fighting the shame and guilt that the woman's currently experiencing. It's a whole history, usually, of society, family, men, women, it- making her feel guilty about her own pleasure and her own sexuality.
Yeah, it's a society. It's interesting because, like, guys, it's no big deal
Hmm.
to touch themselves even at a young age. Like, oh, it's just normal for little boys to even play with themselves. Honestly, like, it really is. To adjust themselves, to have their legs open when they're sitting, and then keep your legs closed. Don't talk about it. We know it's kind of openly talked about that men watch porn and men do this and they masturbate. Like, this is an openly known thing in society, but we don't openly talk about this with females. Not really. There's some platforms where it's talked about, but it's pretty hush hush. So then when I get females in here that want to have pleasure with their partner, this is a barrier that I was telling Katie I struggle with working with my patients when they constantly shut the conversation down. And I know they want to work on this. They've told me they want to work on it, but there's a lot of resistance. And when they come in and they have dyspareunia, so pain with intercourse, first thing that we're always trying to do is just get the pain to go away. And I always tell everybody I work with, like, the first step is we're going to get pain to go away, but that does not mean there's going to be pleasure. First, we get rid of pain, then we work on building up pleasure. So there's this stepwise sequence. And that second part, that pleasure part, it can be so difficult when there's these barriers in the way. And when someone has dyspareunia and they don't want to open their legs and they have intense anxiety and they're in here, I am so good at being patient and knowing how to do what's called graded exposure and slowly working into gaining that trust and building up the confidence and decreasing the anxiety before we even start pelvic floor work, and then slowly increasing the intensity around the pelvic floor work and what they have to do at home. And then we get to that pleasure part, and some patients of mine will just shut down the idea of them having pleasure with their partner. Even though they want it, they want to increase their libido, they want to connect with their partner more, they want more fun. But when we start to talk about it, there's just so much discomfort and shame. They turn into a turtle. And I, as a clinician, that's where I would say I even struggle, where I'm like, okay, like I don't have as much patience, I would say, to slowly bring that about. So I was like, Katie, how do you deal with that? Like, what do you, so often when that happens, I'll just say, I'm always like, you got to go see Katie now. Cause that's where I'm like, I've done my part. Like physically, you're good. I would love to work on pleasure with you, but we're hitting a wall. There's probably like a lot more deep-rooted stuff. Like, please go, you and your partner, please go work with Katie to help with these barriers on the pleasure side.
It's so complicated. The cool thing about the physiology is that there's typically like an answer, right? It's you're experiencing pain because of this, like your pelvic floor is tight or whatever. It's a physiological answer. It's a concrete answer. But when it comes to pleasure, that's where it becomes convoluted because you have to ask so many questions to get to the heart of what is actually going on. And some of the questions women might not even have answers to because it's so deeply ingrained in women that pleasure shouldn't be a part of their sexual experience. And that comes from a lot of different places. It comes from our past, hundreds of years of our society feeling this way. There wasn't really even any research done on the clitoris for a long
Forever, yeah.
forever. Yeah. And then when people started saying that the clitoris its whole function was to help women experience pleasure, that was something that seemed super strange to like the medical community because why would women need to have this organ, this part of themselves that would help them experience pleasure when it's unnecessary for
For
getting pregnant.
procreation, yeah. Hmm.
So just our whole society is wrapped up in this idea that women don't need to experience pleasure and there's no purpose of it. Men experience pleasure, they orgasm, and that is essential usually for procreation, but there's no point in women orgasming. So there's the societal component, there's the partner component, like what's happening in your relationship. Why might you not be experiencing pleasure with your partner? And then that lends itself to all sorts of complicated answers,
Yeah.
and all sorts of history and maybe some trauma or some attachment issues. So it's so complicated, and it usually takes so long to get to the heart of what's actually happening um, that most women are like, I don't need pleasure. That's fine. At least I can have sex now and it doesn't hurt. So that becomes the goal.
It's funny you said that. I feel like that's exactly it is like at least I can have sex now and it doesn't hurt. I'll take that. And that's literally exactly what it is I'll take this. This is good enough for me. And I will say I'm so happy for them that they have come to that conclusion because I am all about my patients like celebrating their wins and their goals. But I am not going to lie. Internally, it kills me. Internally, I'm like, but it could be so much better. I'm like, but you could connect with your husband on such a deeper level, and there could be so much more of an experience that you guys could share together and more pleasure, um, which would make you want to have sex with him more, which would make you want to connect more, which would make you more connected to your own sexuality. It just knowing what it could be is it's so interesting for me because I'm like, do you want to go there? And and again, like majority of my patients say, yes, I want to go there. But the amount of work to go there, there's so many walls and barriers to get there. Um,
Yeah. And that's the complicated like partner part, right? Because quite typically what I see, so when couples get to me and they're, she's saying I experience no pleasure, I don't want to have sex, like this isn't fun for me, like I don't want them touching me. There's so much other stuff happening in their relationship that brought them to this point. And before we even touch on the sex stuff or the pleasure stuff, like I have to I have to deal with like how they fight together or what their routines are at home or other unmet needs in the relationship. And then once all of that is accomplished, then we can talk about the pleasure during sex. But it seems like at the very, top of the pyramid for a lot of people. It's like, well, we have all of this other shit that we have to handle right now because I'm losing my mind. And then maybe we can get to the sex. But usually there's so many layers to tackle before we even get to the pleasure
Yeah.
because it was a long road to get them to this point where they're just like, I don't,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't.
And it's a matter of like not feeling, I think, worthy. Like I'm not worthy enough to deserve to have pleasure. I think that's another factor is like you see so many times women in our society, I don't know, I feel like we sacrifice so much for our family, for our kids. Like we go without. You just see it. I think it's how we're wired. I think it's a societal thing. I don't know. We're just where else I don't see that with my males. And honestly, I love this about men, and I wish women would take a lesson from this. Like, men go for what they want majority of the time, and like they have no problem stating what they need and what they want and having their needs met. They are fine doing that. Like, they're fine having their needs met. And I see so many moms, especially, almost feeling like guilt or shame for having a need met and asking for that need to be met. And so pleasure is having a need met, right? And like asking for that. And so I think that's another barrier, like regardless of whether they even have a good relationship or not with their partner, is like, do I deserve to have this pleasure? Do I deserve to have this need met? Like, yes, you do. You do. You deserve it. And you deserve to go get your hair done. You deserve to go get your nails done. You deserve a massage and you deserve to rest and you deserve to be taken care of. Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting. I can see that. The majority of the women that I get in are just so fed up with their other not needs not being met that they're just like, what's the point? What's the point of even asking for this need when I have all of these other basic needs that are being unmet, or I'm not getting enough help at home, or I'm feeling overworked, or I feel like I'm drowning, or I feel like I'm the only one who sees what needs to be done in this house. Um, so I think it's a combination of the worthiness, and I think it's also a combination of women often taking the brunt of all the things,
Yeah.
right? And it's not a priority. Sex just isn't a priority at that point. Like, and I it's interesting because to what you said earlier, if she were having sex with her partner, if she were connecting in that way, um, a lot of other things might be smoother in the family. Like if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, what I hear a lot of the times from men in particular is if I had this need met, if my wife had sex with me more often, I would be more checked in. Like I would do more around the house. I would be a better partner. I would be more
Yeah.
loving. Right? So she would be getting fed that way. But what happens is like nobody's needs are being met, and then it eventually becomes that nobody wants to meet their partner's needs because the
Yes.
resentment is building.
Yeah. You see that a lot where both people are just not meeting each other's needs.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's become cyclical at that point.
Yeah. I would say the couples that are coming to see me, so, and this is not always, because we definitely get like a different group of people, because you have to understand people who are coming in to work with a pelvic floor PT, this is not necessarily fun work. Not necessarily. This is not fun work. Let's just be honest. Um, you have to really, want to work on having sex with your husband to come in here and get this work done because this is so vulnerable. It's also pricey. It's a lot. And so when they come in here, there's normally so many other things going on. And a lot of the times, not always, a lot of the times they have very supportive husbands and they're like, hey, we're trying to work on this. They just don't know what to do. And they feel so bad. Like the husband doesn't want to hurt her anymore. Like, who wants to have sex and hurt their wife? Nobody. And she, of course, doesn't want to have sex because she's having pain. And then she feels horrible because, like, she's like, I can't have sex with my husband. And, like, he, you feel like it just takes away from you're feeling as a wife, as a woman, not being able to do that, and connect with your husband in that way. And so I think that's where I struggle is like then we finally break through and the pain is gone. And now I'm like, okay, cool, we're here. Now we have this relatively healthy relationship. Like the needs are being met. There isn't resentment. Like the partner actually was really involved in the plan of care, the husband, and like was helping. And we've got all these cool things going on. But then we're hitting this barrier more so with her not feeling comfortable to use a sex toy, to touch herself, to feel worthy enough to have pleasure in the bedroom. And sometimes the husbands are like all about it. Sometimes they'll tell me, and I said this to Katie before we started, and I've heard this so many times, and this is so sad. And if you're listening and you're a man, please listen right now. My females will say, well, I would be open to it. My husband doesn't like when I use a toy because he feels like we're competing or like the to he just doesn't like when I use a toy. And that is so sad to feel like you're competing with a toy. Like the toy is not a competition. The toy is just another way for her to experience pleasure. It's another way to add fun to the bedroom. It's another way for you guys to, again, like I always say, intimacy can be kind of like a playground and you guys are exploring each other's bodies. So to view adding in toys like a competition is an interesting perspective. And I would have a conversation with yourself. Why do I feel that way? Why am I threatened by adding in fun? I know that they probably don't view it as fun. They view it as something else. But you don't have to be everything, right? Like you don't have to be everything for your partner. Other things can come in to add it to the experience within the relationship. So that's where I've found a struggle is the relationship is from what I'm seeing is good and supportive and we're still hitting that barrier.
Yeah. I think it's just an overall discomfort with um anything like exploratory that isn't it's just traditional sex, right? At that point. But I don't know if men are to blame for that. I don't know if women are to blame for that. I don't know who's to blame for that. Probably just our history as a society. But you know, every everyone has a little piece of that. Some people have fought a lot harder to broaden their horizons and gain comfortability in a lot of different realms around sex. And other people, their upbringing just didn't permit it. So they struggle a bit more with that. But there is an overall like societal discomfort with sex and pleasure and what that means and bringing things from outside of the bedroom to assist with pleasure. Um, so yeah, I hear ya, and it seems maybe a little bit odd from our vantage point because we talk about sex every single day. Um, but I think that a lot of people are just very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't think it's odd. I understand it. I would just love to give more permission, I guess, or more I don't know. I'm like I would love to help women overcome that more. And I don't really know how. Like how do we help women to overcome that discomfort and couples in general again like I said sometimes husbands have a discomfort with it and the females don't sometimes I have women who are like hiding their sex toys like they have sex toys that they use on the side but they're like oh my husband has no idea I'm doing this and I'm like oh really like he doesn't know you have that yeah he has no idea and I'm like what would he do if he found out she's like oh I don't know I've had these conversations so that's always so interesting. Even my male patients will hide masturbating from their partners. Like they're like, "Oh no, like I don't want my girlfriend or my wife to know that I'm doing this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Like what would?" And I ask them, I'm like, "What would happen if they found out?" And they're like, "Well, they probably wouldn't like it." I go, "Well, what do you?" And so I asked, "Okay, well, what would they not like about that?" Well, they probably would want me to be doing it with them. And I'm like, "Okay, well, what makes you think that? Like, do you think they have a problem with you just pleasing yourself?" And they're like, "Well, probably not." And I'm like, "Have you ever thought about just like being open about it?" They're like, well, no, I haven't. And I go, what do you think would happen if you were? And they're like, well, they probably would be fine with it. And I'm like, so what do you think stops you from sharing that? So it's like I just ask these questions because it's like we hide in these little bubbles, even from our own partners with intimacy. And it's because society, of course, has so much shame around it. But I'm like, with our partners, gosh, I hope if there's anybody that you can be open with, it's your partner. And if we can start talking about that more openly, we can hopefully bring that together in the bedroom.
Yeah, Brene Brown, who
Yeah,
is amazing in so many different ways. She talks a lot about shame and how it grows and becomes bigger and how it becomes uglier. And her whole thing is that when people don't talk about things, when people keep them in like the dark corners of their brain and keep them as secrets and feel secretive about them, like that's how shame
build.
grows.
Hmm.
So you are right. You are so right. Like even if it's just our partners that we talk about sex with and our sexuality with, like that will dissolve that feeling of like, oh, I'm shameful about this, or this feels wrong, or this feels dirty, or like I'm doing something wrong. Um, that just by opening up to your
Yeah.
partner, like you will feel so much better about
Yeah, and it
it.
doesn't need to be anybody. We're not saying talk about sex with anybody. It's so funny because I'm a pelvic floor PT. This is very interesting. This probably happens to you. We'll be hanging out in friend groups, and sometimes people start being very open about their sex lives in front of me. Like other couples we hang out, I will tell you, I don't like that. I just will be totally honest. Like, and when I'm in an appointment and I'm working with a patient, I'm like, let's talk about it because this is a very different relationship. But when I am hanging out with my friends, I'm like, I do not want to know about your sex life. Um, I don't. I'm like, it's very uncomfortable for me. But anyways, if you have friends who want to talk about it with you, go for it. But I'm like, with your own partner, that's like the one person I would encourage you to just be curious about. Like every good therapist I've ever talked to, and if you look at a lot of like self-help books and therapy books, they always say, be curious. The most important thing that we can do with our partners is to be curious and not just about sexuality, with everything. Because when you ask your partner questions, those deep things that are hiding in there, we can start to know what's going on in their brain. Because when your partner has stuff that's just in there going on and we don't know, that's how separation starts to occur in ways where you're like how do we become so separate? And that is a huge part of that emotional intimacy. So that's maybe even just like step one is like asking. I mean, this is something I talked to you about, and I now ask all my patients to do this that come in with dyspareunia. Is have you guys ever talked about how often you even want to have sex? And they're like, oh, they're like, well, not really. And they're like, well, my husband would want to have sex all the time. And I'm like, well, do you know that? Have you ever asked them? And they're like, well, no. I'm like, well, do you feel comfortable going and asking him before next session how often he actually wants to have sex? And they're like, sure. And I'm like, well, how often do you want to have sex? And they're like, well, I don't know. Like, and I look at them and they'll get real anxious. And I go, don't tell me the answer that you think I want to hear or that you think society wants to hear or you think your husband wants to hear. I said, tell me what you actually really feel. How often do you want to have sex? And I said, and zero and never is okay. And they'll be like, never. I'd like to have never have sex. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. And or they'll be like, like once a month would be fine. I'm like, okay, great. And I'm like, so if you're at never or once a month and he's at 3 times a day, like you said, it's about talking. And you guys need to come to a compromise like you do in every part of your relationship. But a lot of couples, again, aren't having these conversations.
Mhm.
So that's where the curiosity, beyond just even that question when it comes to sexuality, I hope you all who are listening is like start there. Just start with curiosity with each
Yeah.
other.
And also, like, I feel like a lot of people who are listening, or a lot of people I get my hands on in my office, they don't want to ask those questions because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm opening up a can of worms because there's so much baggage
Mm.
at this point. Like if I ask my partner this question, they're gonna think this and this and this and this, or all of these assumptions are gonna be made, or we're gonna get in an argument because we haven't had sex in a long time. But you have to start somewhere, and those questions are the foundation for building something. You have to have the facts to know where you're gonna go in the relationship. So it might cause some tension, it might cause some discomfort, but a foundation has to be built on what you know about the compromise.
Yeah. And the alternative, and that's really what it comes down to. I think a lot of us are just afraid of discomfort, an uncomfortable conversation. And I would just encourage all of you guys, if you are avoiding uncomfortable conversations with your partner, I want you to imagine not having the conversations
Mm,
and letting the distance grow. And I want you to imagine the discomfort that's going to come from that, because either way, there's going to be discomfort. Um, and the discomfort from not having the conversations is going to be separation and not truly knowing your partner and you feeling alone and feeling isolated and not feeling seen by your partner. Like that is the discomfort that is going to start to happen. And then who knows where the relationship goes from there, because it's not going to be ideal if we're not truly having those deep conversations, and they can get uncomfortable. Um, but they're, I would say, a must to keep that emotional intimacy in a relationship, which is paramount for then the physical intimacy part of it.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes even like in your own head reframing it. Like if you notice feelings of discomfort or shame, reframing it into something like societal, right? So I know where this is coming from. I know why I'm feeling this way. It's not about my sexuality, it's about what I've been taught about my sexuality.
yeah, that's good.
It gives you a feeling of accountability or ownership over your own sexuality, knowing that there's a difference between what society has been telling you and how you truly feel. And then knowing that you can feel something differently than what you've been told you should or shouldn't feel.
Yeah, that's super good. Yeah, because like if you were raised in a family where, sex was never talked about or sex was very shamed or like don't have sex before marriage and like let's never talk about it and those types of conversations were just shut down. I mean, please have grace with yourself because then your brain is going to be very anxious
Mhm.
to bring up that topic because it has been trained that topic is not safe. I was taught my whole childhood this is not a safe topic, which is a shame. I hope anyone listening, please don't do this to your children. We should definitely be talking about these topics. Like all of your kids one day are probably going to have sex with somebody. So please talk about sex with them and don't put it in an unsafe, shameful category, I hope. Um, because you're probably going to make things more difficult for them in the future with their partner. Um, yeah, like logic it out, like Katie said, and you can kind of recognize where that comes from and just be really graceful with yourself. It's okay to have the shame. I just encourage you guys to break through the shame and don't let it stop you from having the conversations with your partner and don't let it stop you from trying to experience pleasure, maybe adding a toy in, maybe adding something else new in, even with that discomfort, like try to break past it. I guess that's like this podcast episode is me here just saying, like, try to break through and give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah,
And don't let that discomfort and shame win and guide you.
I love that. Seems like a strong note to end on.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for listening, guys. Again, if you guys have any topics that you want us to cover, please let us know. We have a fun guest coming on next. So I'm excited for that episode, but we will be back soon with some more fun topics. Have a good rest of your day. We are Dr. Molly Hart and Dr. Katie Schubert, and you've been listening to Sex on the Floor podcast. We really hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions and want to get in contact with us, you can follow us on Instagram at Dr. Molly Hart and at Dr. Katie Schubert, on Facebook at Pelvic Balance PT and at Dr. Katie Schubert. And for more information about us on our websites, you can find us at pelvicbalancept.com and at drkatieschubert.com.